The grand doors of the High Council chamber opened with a heavy groan that echoed through the massive hall. Lyra walked forward, her small feet making soft sounds on the polished red stone floor. Above her, the ceiling stretched so high it seemed to touch the sky itself, covered in glowing symbols from the old times. Hundreds of Draal officials sat in curved rows along the walls. They whispered to each other, their four eyes blinking in confusion as they watched a child enter their sacred space. Some laughed quietly. Others looked angry that their important meeting had been interrupted. Lyra stopped in the center of the circular floor. She wore simple gray clothes, the uniform given to children in state facilities. Her dark hair was pulled back from her face, showing features that were a mix of two species. She had her father's brown eyes and gentle face shape, but her skin had the slight purple tint of her mother's people. Her hands, though small, had the long fingers of the Draal. Chancellor Breen sat in the highest seat, his aged body wrapped in red robes of office. He looked down at her with disgust. Who allowed this half-breed child into our chamber? A younger officer in military uniform stood up. Commander Reth spoke carefully. She requested an audience, Chancellor. The law says any citizen may speak to the council during open session. She is not a full citizen, Breen spat. Her father is a human criminal locked in the vault for crimes against our people. Lyra's voice came out clear and strong. My father committed no crime. You arrested him because he discovered something that scared you. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Several officials stood up, pointing at her. One threw his datapad on the ground. The noise bounced off the walls until Breen raised his hand for silence. You dare speak to this council with such disrespect? Breen's face darkened with anger. Your father was caught stealing classified research about Forerunner technology. He planned to sell it to our enemies. That's a lie, Lyra said. She did not shout, but somehow her voice carried to every corner of the massive room. My father discovered that humans can interface with Forerunner technology in ways your people cannot. You imprisoned him to hide that truth. More laughter rippled through the chamber. An elderly female official with elaborate face markings called out, Humans are barely capable of basic space travel. They certainly cannot master technology that we Draal have studied for 1,000 years. Lyra turned to face the speaker. Matriarch Sala, your people studied that technology for 1,000 years and learned nothing. The machines stopped working for you 800 years ago. You cannot even turn them on anymore. The chamber fell quiet. This was a painful truth that everyone knew but rarely spoke about. The Draal had once been masters of Forerunner systems, but generations ago something changed. The ancient technology no longer recognized them. Breen's voice dripped with false sweetness. And you believe humans can do what we cannot? How amusing. Tell us, child, why should we believe such nonsense? Because I can prove it, Lyra said simply. Release my father from the vault and I will help you restore the Forerunner defense systems. Your outer colonies are falling to the scour fleets one by one. Soon they will reach your core worlds. You need the old weapons to survive. The chamber exploded in chaos. Officials shouted over each other. Some called for Lyra to be arrested. Others demanded she be thrown out. A few sat quietly, thinking hard about her words. Commander Reth watched the girl with growing interest. He had fought the scour on 3 different worlds. He had seen entire cities turn to ash, millions of Draal dead or enslaved. The military knew the truth that politicians refused to accept. They were losing the war. Silence! Breen's voice boomed through the chamber. This council will not be blackmailed by a child. You have no proof of your claims. You have no authority to make demands. Lyra met his gaze without fear. I have already activated 6 smaller Forerunner systems in the state facility where I live. The maintenance staff can confirm this. Your own technicians could not make them work for 20 years. I turned them on in less than an hour. An official in the back row stood up. This is true, Chancellor. We received reports but dismissed them as malfunction. If the child really did this, it means nothing. Breen slammed his hand on the armrest of his chair. Parlor tricks with broken equipment. The defense systems are far more complex. Then let me try, Lyra said. Take me to the main Forerunner facility under this building. If I fail, you lose nothing. If I succeed, you gain the weapons you need to win the war. Breen leaned forward, his face twisted with cruel pleasure. And if you fail, child? What then? Lyra's voice did not waver. If I fail, you may do what you wish with me. But my father goes free regardless. Those are my terms. Unacceptable, Breen said flatly. Here are my terms. You will attempt to activate 1 Forerunner system. If you succeed, we will consider reducing your father's sentence. If you fail, both of you will be executed for wasting the council's time during a crisis." The chamber fell silent again. Several officials looked uncomfortable with this harsh judgment, but none spoke against it. Lyra stood very still. She thought of her father in his cold cell alone for 3 years. She thought of her mother, dead from illness before any of this began. She thought of the other human prisoners in the vault, locked away for no reason except fear and prejudice. "I accept your terms," she said quietly. Breen smiled, showing his pointed teeth. "Excellent. Commander Reth, escort this foolish child to the old facility. Let us see what happens when arrogance meets reality." As guards moved to surround her, Lyra looked up at Commander Reth. Something in the military officer's expression had changed. He no longer looked at her with pity or amusement. He looked at her with the respect one soldier gives another before battle. "This way," Reth said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. As they walked toward the chamber exit, Lyra heard the officials begin to laugh and talk among themselves. They thought this would be entertainment, watching a child fail at an impossible task. But Lyra knew something they did not. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Her father had taught her everything he learned before his arrest, and she carried something inside her that pure humans did not have, something that made her special. She would show them all. The court had laughed at her offer. Soon everything would change. Deep beneath the surface of the capital world, in a facility carved from solid rock, David Chen sat on the edge of his narrow bed and stared at the wall. He had scratched marks into the stone to count the days. 1,095 lines covered the space near his sleeping area. 3 years. 3 years since they dragged him from his laboratory and threw him in this place. The cell was small, barely 3 meters on each side. A thin mattress on a metal frame served as his bed. A basic toilet and sink occupied one corner. The walls glowed with a faint blue light that never changed, making it impossible to tell day from night. The door was solid metal with a small slot for food trays. David ran his hand through his hair, now streaked with gray, that had not been there before his arrest. He was 42 years old but felt much older. The loneliness was worse than the physical discomfort. He missed his daughter with an ache that never went away. The sound of footsteps in the corridor outside made him look up. Usually food came at regular intervals, but this was not the right time. The slot in the door opened and a guard's face appeared. "Chen, you have a visitor." David stood up confused. In 3 years, no one had visited him. His lawyer had stopped coming after the trial ended. His colleagues were either imprisoned like him or too frightened to make contact. The door slid open, and Warden Quill entered. The Drawl official was shorter than most of his kind, with pale blue skin and kind eyes. He had always treated the human prisoners with more respect than regulations required. "David," Quill said softly, "I bring news about your daughter." David's heart began to pound. "Is she hurt? Is she sick?" Quill held up his hands. "She is physically well, but she has done something very brave and very foolish." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "She appeared before the High Council today and demanded your release." David felt his legs go weak. He sat down hard on the bed. No, she cannot. She's just a child. They'll hurt her." "She made them an offer," Quill continued. "She said she would activate the Forerunner defense systems if they freed you." The council laughed at her. "Of course they did," David whispered. "They don't believe humans can do it. But Lyra, she can do things even I couldn't do." He looked up at Quill with desperate eyes. "What happened? What did they say?" Quill's expression grew grim. "Chancellor Breen made a counteroffer. She must prove herself by activating one system. If she succeeds, they will consider reducing your sentence. If she fails..." "If she fails what?" David stood up again, his voice rising. "They will execute both of you." David felt the room spin around him. He grabbed the wall to steady himself. "I have to stop this. I have to tell them she withdraws the offer. I'll confess to anything they want. Just don't hurt my daughter." "It's too late," Quill said gently. "She accepted the terms." They have taken her to the Forerunner facility beneath the council building. The test will happen today. David's mind raced. He knew what Lyra could do. He had seen her natural talent with technology from the time she was very small. While other children played with toys, she took apart electronic devices and put them back together better than before. Her hybrid biology gave her advantages that pure humans lacked. But the Forerunner systems were ancient and complex. Even he had only barely begun to understand them before his arrest. Could a 12-year-old girl, no matter how talented, really succeed where teams of Droll scientists had failed for centuries? "Warden," David said urgently, "I need to send her a message, please. There are things she needs to know, details about the Forerunner interfaces that might help her." Quill shook his head sadly. "I cannot do that. It would be seen as helping you cheat the test. I would lose my position, and it would give them an excuse to call the trial invalid." David wanted to scream. Instead, he forced himself to think. "Then at least tell me about the facility they took her to. Which level? Which section?" "The Hall of Echoes level, the old command center," Quill answered. "Why does it matter?" "Because different Forerunner facilities have different interface types," David explained quickly. "If I know which one she's facing, I can at least picture what she's dealing with." He paced the small cell, his scientific mind pushing through his fear. The command center would have a primary control nexus, probably crystalline structure, bioresponsive systems designed to read neural patterns. He stopped pacing and looked at Quill. "She can do this. My daughter is special, Warden. Not just because of her mixed heritage, but because she has something rare. She can see patterns that others miss. She thinks in ways that bridge different kinds of logic." "I hope you are right," Quill said. "For both your sakes." After Quill left, David could not sit still. He paced his cell, remembering everything he had discovered in his research. He thought about the day Lyra was born, how the doctors marveled at her perfect health despite being the offspring of two different species. He remembered teaching her to read, watching her absorb information like a sponge. He remembered the last time he saw her 3 years ago. She had been 9 years old, crying as the guards pulled him away from their home. He had shouted to her, to be brave, to study hard, to remember everything he taught her. At the time, he meant it as general father advice. Now those words might save her life. Hours passed. David had no way to know what was happening above. He imagined Lyra standing before some ancient machine, trying to make it respond. He imagined the council members watching, waiting for her to fail so they could carry out their threat. The thought of losing his daughter made him feel sick. She was all he had left in the universe. Her mother, his beloved wife May, had died from a disease shortly after his arrest. The Droll medical system did not give the same level of care to humans and hybrids. Lyra had watched her mother die and then been taken to a state facility to live among strangers, and now she was risking her life to save him. David sat down and put his head in his hands. "Please," he whispered to no one, to the universe, to whatever power might be listening. "Please let her succeed. Take my life if you want, but let my daughter live." The cell door suddenly opened again. David jumped to his feet. Warden Quill stood in the doorway, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood 4 guards in full armor. "What's happening?" David demanded. "Is it over, is she?" "The test is still underway," Quill said, his expression unreadable. "But something unexpected has occurred. The Council has ordered all human prisoners to be brought to a secure gathering area. We are to await further instructions." "Why? What does that mean?" Quill glanced at the guards, then back to David. He leaned close and whispered, "It means your daughter did something that scared them. That's all I know." As the guards escorted David out of his cell for the first time in 3 years, he felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. The corridor outside was filled with other human prisoners being moved from their cells. He recognized some faces, fellow scientists who had worked with him before the arrests. Dr. Una Patel saw him and called out, "David, is it true about Lyra?" "I don't know what's happening," he called back. They were herded into a large chamber that served as a communal area. Nearly 60 human prisoners gathered there. all looking confused and frightened. The guards formed a perimeter around them, weapons ready. David found Yuna in the crowd. She gripped his arm. "They say a child activated a Forerunner system. They say it was your daughter." "It's supposed to be just a test," David said. But Quill said something unexpected happened. Above them, on the surface world, in the halls of power where decisions were made, David's daughter stood at the center of a miracle that would change everything. But in that underground chamber, surrounded by guards and fellow prisoners, David could only wait and hope and pray that he would see his little girl again. Commander Reth led Lyra down a series of stone staircases that spiraled deep into the ground. The air grew cooler with each level they descended. Ancient light panels flickered along the walls, many of them dead or dying after centuries of neglect. Behind them followed Chancellor Breen and a dozen council members who wanted to witness what they expected to be an entertaining failure. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow passage. "How much further?" Breen complained. "These old stairs are difficult for my joints." "The command center is on the lowest level," Reth answered. "It has been sealed for nearly 200 years. We stopped sending technicians down here after the 15th team gave up." They reached a massive door carved with symbols that seemed to shift and move in the flickering light. Reth placed his hand on a panel beside the door. It glowed briefly, then the door ground open with a sound like thunder. The chamber beyond took Lyra's breath away. It was enormous, easily 50 meters across and just as tall. The walls were covered in crystalline structures that pulsed with faint inner light. In the center of the room stood a raised platform with a single pillar of dark crystal rising from its middle. Around the pillar, arranged in a circle, were dozens of interface stations. Each one had a smooth surface marked with patterns that made Lyra's eyes hurt if she looked at them too long. Everything was covered in dust and debris. Some of the ceiling panels had fallen over the years, creating piles of rubble on the floor. "There," Breen said, pointing to the central pillar. "That is the primary nexus. Every Forerunner facility has one. This particular nexus controls defensive weapons in orbit around our world. If you can activate it, those weapons will respond to commands again." He walked carefully to the edge of the platform, his old body moving slowly. "Dozens of our best technicians have tried. Some of them died trying. The system kills those it deems unworthy of access." Lyra looked at the pillar with new understanding. "You didn't tell me I might die just from touching it. Would you have come if I had?" Breen smiled coldly. "Consider it extra motivation to succeed." Matriarch Sala, the elderly female official who had spoken in the council chamber, moved forward to stand beside Lyra. She was ancient even by Draal standards, her skin deeply lined with age. "Child," she said softly, "I do not wish to see you die today. If you have any doubt, withdraw now. I will speak on your behalf to the council." "And my father?" Lyra asked. Sola's face fell. "I cannot promise his release. I can only promise that you will live." Lyra shook her head. "Then I must try." She walked toward the platform, her small feet crunching on fallen debris. Behind her, she heard the council members settling in to watch. Some of them made small bets with each other on how long she would last. As Lyra climbed the steps to the platform, she felt something strange. A tingling sensation in her fingers like tiny electric shocks. The closer she got to the pillar, the stronger it became. She could feel the pillar somehow, as if it were aware of her presence. She remembered her father's lessons. He had taught her that Forerunner technology was not truly artificial. It was biomechanical, designed to work with living minds. The machines needed to recognize the user as compatible before they would respond. The Draal had once been compatible. But something changed in their biology over the centuries. The machines no longer recognized them. They rejected Draal attempts to interface, sometimes violently. Humans were different. Humans were new to the galaxy. Their minds structured in ways the ancient machines found interesting. David had discovered that human neural patterns matched certain base protocols in Forerunner systems. Not perfectly, but enough to establish basic connection. And Lyra, with her mixed heritage, carried patterns from both species. She was something unique in the galaxy. She stood before the pillar, now close enough to touch. The crystal surface swirled with dark colors like smoke trapped in glass. She could see her reflection in its surface, distorted and strange. "Well?" Breen called from below. "Are you going to stand there all day?" Lyra took a deep breath and placed both hands on the pillar. Pain exploded through her body. Every nerve caught fire at once. She heard herself scream but could not pull away. Her hands seemed fused to the crystal surface. Images flooded her mind, thousands of them all at once. She saw battles in space, worlds burning, machines larger than planets tearing through reality itself. She saw the Forerunners, the ancient race that built all this technology. They were not like any species she knew. They existed in multiple dimensions at once, their bodies shifting between states of matter and energy. They had created wonders beyond imagination and horrors beyond description. And they were gone. All of them. Dead or vanished, leaving only their machines behind. The pillar was testing her, pushing against her mind to see if she would break. It showed her terrible things trying to make her let go. She saw her mother dying, her father being arrested, herself alone and afraid in the state facility. But Lyra did not let go. Instead, she pushed back. She focused on her breathing, on staying calm. She imagined her mind as a flexible thing, like water flowing around obstacles. When the pillar pushed, she bent. When it tested, she answered not with force, but with understanding. She felt the moment when something changed. The pain stopped suddenly. The images in her mind slowed down, became clearer. And she heard a voice, not in her ears, but directly in her thoughts. Query. Identity designation? Lyra thought her answer rather than speaking it. I am Lyra Chandravi. I am a child of two species. I am here to activate the defense systems. Query. Authorization level? I have no authorization. I only have need. My people are dying. The scour fleets are destroying our worlds. We need the weapons to survive. There was a pause. Lyra felt the presence in the pillar, considering her words. It felt vast and cold, but not evil. Just very, very old and tired. Statement. This unit has been dormant for 843 local stellar cycles. Previous operators lost compatibility. Species evolution rendered interface impossible. I know, Lyra thought back. But I am not fully Draal, I am also human. Will you work with me? Carry human species designation unknown. Clarification required. Lyra realized the Forerunner systems had never encountered humans before. Her people were too new to the galaxy. The machines had no memory of her species. Humans are from a world called Earth, she explained in her mind. We are young and weak compared to other species. But we learn fast, we adapt. Please test my neural patterns. See if I am compatible. She felt something probe deep into her mind, examining her thoughts with scientific precision. It was uncomfortable but not painful, like having a bright light shined in her eyes. The presence moved through her memories, her emotions, her very sense of self. Analysis complete. Human neural architecture shows promising compatibility. Hybrid nature provides enhanced interface potential. Authorization granted at basic level. Lyra felt energy flow through her hands into the pillar. The dark crystal began to glow with bright white light. The light spread outward, running through channels in the floor and walls like liquid fire. The entire chamber lit up. The council members jumped to their feet, shouting in surprise. Reth put his hand on his weapon, not sure what was happening. Lyra opened her eyes and saw everything. Her hands were still on the pillar, but now it felt warm and welcoming. She could sense the entire network of Forerunner systems stretching out across the world and into space. The defensive platforms in orbit, silent for centuries, began to wake up. On screens that materialized around the chamber, data streamed past in languages both ancient and new. Weapon systems ran diagnostics. Shield generators tested their power cores. Sensor arrays began mapping the space around the planet. Impossible, Breen whispered. She actually did it. Matriarch Sola moved closer to the platform, her eyes wide with wonder. How much can you control, child? Lyra explored the network with her mind. It was like learning to use a new limb. Awkward at first, but growing easier by the moment. I can access the entire planetary defense grid. Weapon platforms are at 40% power and rising. They need time to fully charge, but they will be operational within hours. She turned to look at Breen, her hands still glowing where they touched the pillar. I have fulfilled my part of the agreement. Now release my father. Breen's face went through several expressions. Shock gave way to fear, then to anger. The agreement was that we would consider reducing his sentence, not immediate release. That was your term, not mine, Lyra said firmly. I said release him, and you agreed to my terms when I accepted the test. I agreed to nothing. Breen shouted. Commander Reth stepped forward. Chancellor, with respect, the entire council heard the exchange. The child said her terms were release of her father. You said if she failed, both would be executed. The implication was clear that success meant his freedom. Breen turned on Reth with fury. You dare contradict me? Remember your place, Commander. But before Reth could respond, alarm sirens began to wail throughout the facility. Red emergency lights bathed the ancient chamber in blood-colored illumination. The sirens screamed so loud that conversation became impossible. Lyra kept her hands on the pillar, feeling information flow through her mind about what was happening. Scour ships. Dozens of them, dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. They were heading directly toward the capital world. Commander Reth grabbed his communication device and shouted into it, trying to be heard over the alarms. Military Command, this is Reth. Confirm enemy presence. How many ships? Static crackled, then a panicked voice responded. 43 vessels detected. Fleet composition includes 6 Devastator-class warships. They will be in firing range within 3 hours. Sir, we don't have enough ships to stop them. The color drained from Breen's face. He grabbed at Matriarch Sala's arm to steady himself. This cannot be happening, not here. Not at our capital. Sala pulled away from him, her ancient eyes sharp with thought. The Scour have never struck this deep into our territory before. They must know we are weak. They smell our decay and move in for the kill. Lyra spoke, her voice somehow cutting through the noise. I can help. The defense platforms are charging faster than expected. They will be ready in 90 minutes, not hours. Breen spun to face her. 90 minutes? The Scour will be in range in 3 hours. That gives us time to prepare. He pointed at her with a shaking finger. You will remain here and operate those weapons when the time comes. Your father can wait. No, Lyra said simply. I will help you fight the Scour. But first you honor our agreement. Release my father and the other human prisoners. Give them full citizenship and equal rights under your law. Then I will save your world. You dare make demands while we face invasion? Breen's voice rose to a scream. Guards, arrest this child. We will force her to cooperate. Reth moved to block the guards who stepped forward. Chancellor, that would be unwise. If you harm her, we lose our only chance to activate the defense grid. Then threaten her father, Breen snarled. Bring the human up from the vault. Tell her we will execute him unless she obeys. Lyra felt rage surge through her, hot and fierce. The pillar beneath her hands responded to her emotion, pulsing with energy. The lights in the chamber grew brighter. Small arcs of electricity jumped between the interface stations. Be very careful, Chancellor, Lyra said softly. This system responds to my thoughts and feelings. I am not yet fully trained in controlling it. If I become upset, things might happen that none of us intend. It was not an empty threat. She could feel the power flowing through her, vast and dangerous. The Forerunner machines had weapons that could crack a planet's crust. She would never use them, but Breen did not know that. Matriarch Sala placed herself between Breen and Lyra. Enough. I am eldest of this council, and I claim priority of voice. She turned to address the other council members who had pressed themselves against the walls during the emergency. This child has done what our people could not do for 8 centuries. She asks only for justice in return. What does it say about us that we refuse? It says we are practical, Breen shot back. We can discuss reforms and rights after the battle. First, we survive. You will promise anything to survive this moment, Sala replied. But after the danger passes, you will forget those promises. I know you, Breen. I have watched you lie and cheat your way to power for decades. This time we do things properly. She walked slowly to the platform and looked up at Lyra. Child, I cannot give you everything you ask. I do not have that authority alone. But I can guarantee this much. Your father will be released immediately today. The other prisoners will be given fair trials, not the show trials they received before. And I will personally sponsor a bill in the council to grant humans full citizenship. It will not pass immediately, but I will fight for it with my remaining years. That is not enough, Lyra said. It is all I can honestly promise, Sala replied. Sometimes we must accept progress rather than perfection. Save us today, and I swear on my ancestors that I will spend whatever time I have left fixing the injustices of our system. Lyra studied the old Draal's face. She saw genuine regret there and determination. Unlike Breen, Sala was not lying to save herself. She truly meant what she said. Bring my father here, Lyra said finally. Let me see him, speak with him. Then I will decide. Breen laughed harshly. You are in no position to make demands. She is in the only position that matters, Reth said. He had been listening to his communication device. Military command just confirmed. Our fleet cannot stop the scour attack. Without the defense platforms, this world will fall. Every person in this room will be dead by nightfall. The child holds all our lives in her hands. The truth of this statement silenced everyone. They stood in the ancient chamber, beneath centuries of accumulated dust and failure, and faced the reality that their mighty empire now depended on a 12-year-old hybrid child. Fine, Breen spat. Bring the father. Let them have their reunion. But make it quick. Reth spoke into his device, giving orders to the vault. Then he moved to stand beside Lyra. That was bravely done, he said quietly. But know this. If you do not help us after seeing your father, I will be forced to take action. I have sworn oaths to protect this world. I understand, Lyra said. You are a soldier. You do what soldiers must do. But I hope it does not come to that, Reth added. I have a daughter of my own. She is older than you, but I see the same fire in your eyes that I see in hers. The determination to fight for what is right, even when the fight seems hopeless. Time moved differently while they waited. The alarms eventually stopped, leaving an echoing silence. The council members whispered among themselves. Breen paced angrily. Sala sat on a fallen pillar, resting her old bones. Lyra kept her hands on the nexus, feeling the defense platforms continue to charge. She could sense each weapon system coming online one by one. The ancient machines were eager to function again, to serve their purpose. They had been sleeping for so long. Footsteps echoed in the stairwell. Everyone turned to look. A squad of guards appeared, escorting a thin human man with gray-streaked hair. He looked around the chamber with confusion until his eyes found Lyra. Papa! Lyra wanted to run to him, but her hands remained connected to the pillar. She could not let go yet. David Chen broke free from the guards and ran to the platform. He climbed the steps and stopped just short of touching her, afraid he might disrupt whatever connection she had made with the machine. Lyra, what have you done? Why did you risk yourself? To save you, she said simply. Because you are my father and I love you, and 3 years is too long to be apart. David's eyes filled with tears. But the danger. They could kill you. They could, Lyra agreed. But they won't. Because I am the only one who can save them from the scour attack. I am valuable now, Papa. That makes me safe, at least for today. She told him quickly about the agreement, about Breen's lies and Sala's promise. David listened, his scientist mind processing everything. When she finished, he looked at the council members with disgust. You people learned nothing from your fall, he said. You still think you can manipulate and control. You still believe that might makes right. He turned back to Lyra. Baby girl, you don't have to help them. Let their empire fall. We can escape, find somewhere safe. There is nowhere safe, Papa, Lyra said gently. If the capital falls, the scour will not stop. They will sweep through every system. Billions will die, including humans on the colony worlds, including the other children at the facility where I live. David closed his eyes. You are wiser than I was at your age. You understand that sometimes we must help those who do not deserve our help, because others who do deserve it will suffer if we refuse. Sala deserves our help, Lyra said. She has been kind. And Commander Reth has honor, I can see it. We help them and they will help us change things. Then do what you must, David said. But know this. Whatever happens today, I am proud of you. Your mother would be proud too. Lyra smiled, tears running down her own cheeks now. Stay close, Papa. I want you where I can see you. It makes me feel stronger. She turned to face Breen and the council. I will activate the full defense network and help you fight the scour. But after this battle, things change. No more lies. No more prisons for innocent people. No more treating humans like lesser beings. This is not a request, Chancellor. This is what will happen. Or what? Breen demanded. Or I shut down every Forerunner system on this world, Lyra said calmly. And I make sure no one else can ever turn them on again. The chamber fell silent as everyone realized she could absolutely do that. Above them, the scour fleet drew closer, death approaching on solar winds. Lyra stood before the pillar with her father beside her, watching data stream through her consciousness. The scour fleet moved like a dark tide across the system, their ships bristling with weapons designed to crack planetary shields and burn cities to glass. Commander Reth had established a command post in the ancient chamber, setting up portable displays that showed the tactical situation. Military officers hurried back and forth, coordinating the defense. The Drow fleet moved into position, their ships pathetically few against the Scour numbers. Defense platforms are at 90% charge, Lyra reported. They will be fully operational in 15 minutes. Reth studied his displays with a grim expression. The Scour will be in firing range in 20 minutes. It will be close. He looked at Lyra with concern. Have you ever controlled weapons before? Do you know how to target and fire? The system is teaching me, Lyra said. It shows me what to do. The platforms have their own intelligence. They can identify targets and calculate firing solutions. I just have to give them permission to engage. David placed a hand on her shoulder. Baby girl, you understand what that means? You will be responsible for killing thousands of beings. Lyra's voice was quiet but steady. The Scour gave us no choice, Papa. They are coming to kill millions on this world. Sometimes there are only bad choices and worse choices. Matriarch Sala approached the platform, moving carefully on her old legs. I do not envy you this burden, child. Taking life weighs heavy on the soul no matter how necessary it may be. Have you killed before, Matriarch? Lyra asked. Many times, Sala replied. I was a fleet commander in my youth before politics consumed me. I remember every ship I destroyed, every crew that died because of my orders. They visit my dreams even now, decades later. How do you bear it? By remembering that the alternative was worse, Sala said. By working every day to make the galaxy a better place, so that fewer young people must make such terrible choices. By trying to be worthy of the sacrifice others made. An alarm chimed from Reth's displays. The Scour are launching fighters. They are sending advance units ahead of the main fleet. Lyra felt the information flow into her mind. 300 small attack craft moving fast. They would reach the planet before the larger ships. Their goal was to destroy defensive installations and create chaos. The platforms are ready now, Lyra said. I can engage them. Do it, Reth ordered. Lyra took a deep breath and gave the command with her thoughts. High above the planet, in the cold dark of orbital space, ancient weapons came alive. 42 defensive platforms that had been silent for 8 centuries suddenly blazed with power. Energy beams lanced through space, each shot calculated with mathematical precision. The Forerunner targeting systems were far beyond anything the modern species possessed. They did not miss. On the displays, Lyra watched red dots representing Scour fighters begin to disappear. One after another, they died in silent explosions that bloomed and faded against the black. It was strange and terrible and somehow beautiful. Incredible accuracy, Reth breathed. 98% hit rate. Our own weapons are lucky to achieve 40%, but the Scour kept coming. For every fighter that died, 2 more advanced. They had numbers on their side and they used them ruthlessly. Some got through the defensive fire and dove toward the planet, targeting cities and military bases. Lyra, can you activate planetary shields? David asked. Forerunner bases usually had defensive barriers. Lyra searched through the network with her mind. Yes, I can feel them, but they will take power from the weapons. I can have strong shields or strong weapons, not both at the same time. Give us shields, Reth decided. Let our fleet handle the fighters that get through. We need protection from the Devastator-class warships. Their main guns can burn continents. Lyra shifted power distribution. Above the planet, a shimmer of energy appeared in space. The shield was invisible to normal sight, but it covered the entire world like a second atmosphere. Scour fighters that tried to pass through simply ceased to exist, their matter converted to energy by the barrier. Magnificent, Sala whispered. I remember stories from my grandmother about the old shields. I never thought to see them with my own eyes. The main Scour fleet arrived. 6 enormous warships, each one 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons. They were ugly things. All sharp angles and exposed machinery designed purely for destruction. Around them flew hundreds of smaller vessels, cruisers and destroyers and carriers. The Drawl fleet moved to intercept. 23 ships, all they could gather on short notice against nearly 200 Scour vessels. It was suicide, but they had no choice. All units engage at will, Reth commanded into his communicator. Fight with honor. Die with honor. Protect our homeworld. Space erupted in fire and fury. Ships on both sides began to die. The Scour had numbers, but the Drawl had skill and desperation. They fought like cornered animals, making the enemy pay for every meter of space. But it was not enough. The Drawl lines began to collapse. Ships broke apart under concentrated fire. Life pods ejected into space, carrying crews who hoped for rescue. The Scour ignored them, focusing on destroying military targets. They are breaking through, Reth said, his voice tight with stress. 2 Devastator-class ships are moving into firing position. If they target the shield with their main weapons, it will fail. Then I'll destroy them first, Lyra said. She focused on the 2 massive warships. The defense platforms swiveled to target them, charging their main cannons. But the Devastators were heavily armored, designed to absorb tremendous damage. The first shot struck the lead Devastator amidships. Its shields flared and held. The second shot hit the same location, punching through to the hull. The third shot burned deep into the ship's interior. The Devastator began to list to one side, trailing atmosphere and debris. But it was not dead. Its main gun, a massive weapon running the length of the ship, began to glow with building energy. It's going to fire, Reth shouted. Brace for impact. Lyra acted on instinct. She pulled power from the shields on the opposite side of the planet and reinforced the section facing the Devastator. At the same moment, every defense platform within range fired at once. The Devastator's main gun discharged, a beam of concentrated energy powerful enough to boil oceans. It struck the planetary shield directly. The impact sent shockwaves through the barrier, causing it to ripple and flex. Buildings on the surface shook. People in the capital city looked up in terror as the sky seemed to catch fire. But the shield held. And in that same instant, 42 shots from the defense platform struck the Devastator from multiple angles. The massive ship simply came apart, breaking into pieces that tumbled through space. The second Devastator tried to retreat, but there was nowhere to go. The defense platforms tracked it with mechanical patience and tore it to pieces. The remaining scour ships are withdrawing, an officer reported. They're leaving the system. Reth stared at his displays in disbelief. We won. Against those odds, we actually won. But Lyra felt something else through the network, a communication signal tightly focused coming from one of the retreating scour ships. It was directed at the Forerunner system, which meant it was directed at her. They are sending a message, she said. I can hear it. What do they say? Reth asked. Lyra listened to the alien signal, her hybrid mind somehow able to interpret it. They say that we surprised them. They say that they thought this world was weak and easy prey. They say... She paused, struggling to understand. They say they are sorry. Sorry? Breen had been silent during the battle, cowering in a corner. Now he emerged, confused. The Scour do not apologize? They are mindless killers. No, Lyra said slowly. They are not mindless. They are running from something. Something that terrifies them so much that they attack other worlds just to survive. She felt the Scour message continue. Images filled her mind, transmitted through the Forerunner network. She saw worlds burning, but not from Scour weapons. She saw something else, something vast and terrible moving through space. Machines of enormous size, ancient beyond measure, awakening from long sleep. They call them the Watchers, Lyra whispered. The Forerunners built them to guard the galaxy. But something went wrong. The Watchers decided that biological life itself was a threat. They are cleansing the galaxy, world by world. The Scour are refugees fleeing before them. The chamber fell silent as this truth settled over everyone. They had won the battle, but only because the Scour were themselves desperate and dying. The real threat was still coming. David spoke into the silence. How long do we have? The Scour estimate 5 years before the Watchers reach this region of space, Lyra said. She turned to face the council members. 5 years to prepare. 5 years to unite every species, every world against a common enemy. Matriarch Sala looked at Chancellor Breen. Still think humans should be second-class citizens? Still think we can afford to fight among ourselves? Breen said nothing. His face was gray with shock. Reth straightened his uniform. We need to convene an emergency council session. Every world in the Confederacy must know about this threat. Every species must be warned. Not just the Confederacy, Lyra said. Everyone, even our enemies. Even the Scour themselves. We all face extinction. We must work together or die separately. She finally released her connection to the pillar, pulling her hands away. The glow faded from her skin, leaving her feeling exhausted and empty. David caught her as she stumbled. I've got you, baby girl, he said, holding her tight. You did so well. You saved us all. I just delayed the end, Lyra said tiredly. The hard part comes next. Above them, through layers of rock and metal, the stars shone in an indifferent sky, beautiful and cold and full of dangers that no one had imagined. 6 months had changed everything. Lyra walked through the corridors of the new Alliance headquarters, watching workers from a dozen different species moving together to build something unprecedented. The building stood where an old prison once existed. They had torn down the vault and built this place on its ruins, a symbolic gesture that everyone understood. Her father walked beside her, carrying a data pad filled with research notes. David had lost the gray, haunted look he wore when first released. He smiled more now. He had put on weight. He looked like a man who could finally breathe freely. The Joint Research Initiative is making excellent progress, David said, reviewing his notes. Human intuition combined with Drow technical knowledge and Scour biological expertise. We are learning so much so fast. Fast enough? Lyra asked. She was 13 now, taller than 6 months ago, but still young. Still learning to carry the weight of being a symbol. Maybe, David replied honestly. The Watchers are still 5 years away, but that is not much time to prepare an entire galaxy for war. We need weapons we have not invented yet, ships we have not designed, strategies we have not conceived. They reached the observation deck, a vast room with windows overlooking the capital city. The view showed a transformed world. Humans walked freely among Drow and dozens of other species. The old segregation laws had been abolished in the first month after the Scour attack. Chancellor Breen fought against it, but Matriarch Sala rallied enough support to overrule him. Breen himself was gone now, removed from office in disgrace. New leadership ran the council, younger voices who understood that survival required cooperation, not domination. Commander Reth entered the observation deck, now promoted to general. He wore a new uniform that displayed the symbol of the Alliance rather than the old Confederacy insignia. Lyra, David, good timing. The delegation from the Scour homeworld has arrived. They are requesting to meet you both. Lyra felt nervous energy flutter in her stomach. She had been communicating with the Scour through the Forerunner network for months, but this would be her first face-to-face meeting. David squeezed her hand reassuringly. They followed Reth to a conference room where 3 Scour representatives waited. Lyra had seen images, but reality was still startling. The Scour looked like insects magnified to human size, with multiple limbs and segmented bodies covered in dark, chitinous armor. Their faces were alien, dominated by compound eyes and mandibles that clicked when they spoke. But they wore translator devices that converted their clicks into understandable language, and they bowed respectfully when Lyra entered. "We greet the bridge builder," the lead Scour said. "You are the one who heard our message. You are the one who saw past our desperate attacks to understand our fear. I am Lyra," she said simply. "And this is my father, David. We are happy to meet you in peace rather than war." They sat around a circular table designed to accommodate different body types. The Scour representative introduced herself as Speaker Trill, a diplomat authorized to negotiate on behalf of the Scour collective consciousness. "We wish to share everything we know about the Watchers," Trill began. "We have been fleeing them for 30 years. We have watched them destroy 17 worlds. We have learned their patterns, their weaknesses, their terrible efficiency." "Any information helps," David said, taking notes on his data pad. "We need to understand what we face." For the next hour, they discussed the Watchers. The ancient machines were massive beyond comprehension, each one the size of a small moon. They moved through space, scanning for biological life signs. When they found life, they eliminated it with surgical precision, not out of hatred but out of cold programmed logic that determined biological life was chaotic and dangerous. "The Forerunners created them as guardians," Trill explained. "But the Forerunners themselves were destroyed by their creation. The Watchers turned on their makers, deciding that even their creators were too flawed to survive." "How do you destroy something that was designed to be indestructible?" Reth asked. "We do not know," Trill admitted. "Every weapon we tried failed. Every strategy we attempted was countered. They learn from each encounter, adapting their defenses. They are the perfect enemy." Lyra had been quiet, thinking. Now she spoke. "The Forerunner systems I can access do not include information about the Watchers. It is like that data was deliberately removed. But there must be records somewhere. The Forerunners would not create such weapons without also creating a way to stop them." "We believe the same," Trill said. "We have searched dozens of Forerunner facilities but found nothing. Whatever knowledge exists, it is hidden deeply." "Then we keep searching," David said firmly. "We have 5 years. We use every moment of that time. We explore every Forerunner site we can find. We combine the knowledge of every species. We refuse to accept defeat. The meeting continued for hours. They discussed military strategies, evacuation plans, research priorities. Slowly, a picture emerged of what the galaxy needed to do to survive. After the Scour delegation left, Lyra stood by the window again, watching the sun set over the city. The light painted everything in shades of orange and gold. Matriarch Sola joined her, moving slowly with a cane. The old drow looked tired but content. "I wanted to tell you personally," Sola said. "The final vote happened today." The council approved full citizenship for humans and all hybrid individuals. "The law takes effect immediately," Lyra smiled. "You kept your promise." "I did," Sola agreed. "It was harder than I expected. Many still harbor prejudice, but fear of the Watchers convinced even the stubborn ones that we cannot afford to be divided." "I wish my mother could have seen this," Lyra said quietly. "She believed that our species could work together. She died thinking her dream would never happen." "She saw it through you," Sola replied. "Every parent lives on in their children. Your mother's hope, your father's knowledge, they both flow through you." David approached with General Reth. "We have received reports from survey teams," David announced. "They found another Forerunner facility on a world at the edge of known space. A big one, possibly a primary command center. If there are answers about the Watchers anywhere, they might be there." "How long to reach it?" Lyra asked. 3 weeks by the fastest ship available," Reth said. "I am organizing an expedition. Scientists, soldiers, diplomats. We need representatives from multiple species to show we are united." He looked at Lyra. "We need you to come. Your ability to interface with Forerunner systems is unique. You are the key to unlocking their secrets." Lyra felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders again. She was 13. She should be in school, playing with friends, worrying about homework. Instead, she carried the hopes of billions. But she thought about the Scour, desperate and afraid, attacking out of terror rather than aggression. She thought about all the worlds that would burn if the Watchers were not stopped. She thought about her mother's dream of unity and her father's belief in human potential. "I'll go," she said. "When do we leave?" 3 days, Reth replied. "That gives you time to prepare and say goodbye to anyone important." After Reth left, David and Lyra walked together through the building. They passed laboratories where humans and aliens worked side by side. They passed meeting rooms where former enemies planned joint strategies. They passed childcare centers where hybrid children played without anyone treating them as different or wrong. "Are you scared?" David asked his daughter. "Yes," Lyra admitted, "but being scared does not mean I cannot be brave too." They reached the memorial wall, newly constructed. It listed the names of everyone who died in the Scour attack 6 months ago. Thousands of names, Droll and human and others. At the top, carved in large letters, were words that Lyra had suggested. "They died believing we were enemies. We honor them by proving we are family." David read the words and nodded. "Your mother would be so proud of you." "I know I am. I miss her, Papa." "I know, baby girl. I miss her too." They stood together in silence, father and daughter, human and hybrid. Two people who had sparked a revolution simply by refusing to accept injustice. 3 days later, Lyra stood in the hangar bay of the largest ship in the new Alliance fleet. The vessel was called the Unity, another symbolic name. It carried a crew of 200 from 17 different species. The best scientists, the finest soldiers, the wisest diplomats, and one 13-year-old girl who could talk to ancient machines. David hugged her tightly before she boarded. "Come back safe," he whispered. "I just got you back. I am not ready to lose you again." "I will come back," Lyra promised. "I have too much work to do here. We are going to change the galaxy, Papa. Make it a place where no one is treated as less because of what they are." She boarded the ship. The hatch closed. Through the viewport, she watched her father wave as the Unity lifted off, engines burning bright against the darkening sky. The ship climbed through the atmosphere and entered space. Around them, the stars stretched in every direction, infinite and beautiful. Somewhere out there, 5 years away, an ancient threat approached. But also out there, scattered across thousands of worlds, were people of every species who now worked together toward a common goal. Lyra placed her hand on the wall of the ship, feeling its systems through her hybrid senses. She could sense the crew, their hopes and fears, their determination to survive. She could feel the ship itself, eager to fly, to carry them toward whatever destiny awaited. And she thought about that moment in the council chamber 6 months ago, when she made her offer and they laughed at her. When she was just a child asking for justice, how much had changed. How much still needed to change. But for the first time in a very long time, Lyra felt something that had been missing. She felt hope. The Unity jumped to hyperspace, leaving the capital world behind. The stars blurred and stretched, and somewhere ahead in the ancient ruins of a dead civilization, answers waited to be found. The story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But Lyra knew one thing with certainty. Whatever came next, humanity would face it standing equal with the other species of the galaxy, not as servants or second-class citizens, but as partners and friends. Her mother had dreamed it. Her father had fought for it. And she had demanded it with such conviction that an empire had no choice but to change. Release my human father and I'll help you up. The court had laughed. And then everything changed.